For the last, I don't know, 100 years or so,
Hmm.
building a company was a lot like pouring concrete into a predetermined mold.
Oh, totally.
Like you create this rigid, perfectly defined structure, job description, basically, and then you try to find a human being who perfectly matches the shape of that exact hole.
Yeah, that's like the perfect visualization of the whole industrial era mindset. I mean, you pour the person into the senior marketing manager mold or the, logistics coordinator
Wow.
mold. And as long as they fit those exact dimensions and they don't spill over the edges, everything is supposedly fine. It's neat, it's categorized, it makes payroll and HR compliance very straightforward.
Straightforward, yeah.
Yeah.
But what happens when the ground starts shaking? What happens when the mold itself becomes completely obsolete almost overnight? But you've already poured the concrete.
Exactly, you're stuck.
You're stuck. So welcome back, our favorite learner. Today's discussion is a special deep dive of Building Bridges Insights. And our mission today is to really unpack a massive, fundamental shift that is happening in the corporate world right this second.
It's a huge shift.
It really is. We are looking at how skills-based organizations, or SBOs as you'll hear them called, are no longer just some quirky HR experiment.
Oh, far from it. I mean, they are rapidly becoming the fundamental operating logic for how work, talent, and just overall value creation are connected in the modern economy.
Yeah.
If you are a leader, this is quickly moving from a theoretical framework to an absolute, survival mechanism.
Right. And to map this out, we've got an incredible stack of really fresh 2025 and 2026 intelligence on the table today. We are synthesizing research from BCG, Deloitte, PwC, the World Economic Forum, and LinkedIn.
Lots of heavy hitters.
Yeah, the data is deep on this one. And the hook here, the thing you really need to understand right out of the gate, is that the traditional job description is effectively dying.
It's on its way out, for sure.
Yeah, and adapting to this new skills-based reality isn't just a nice to have anymore. It is the only way to survive a world where the half-life of a learned skill is now, what, less than 5 years?
Less than 5 years, yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at why this shift is happening with such incredible urgency right now.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the traditional corporate structure relies entirely on headcount, right? It relies on counting jobs. But the World Economic Forum projects that 170 million new jobs will be created by 2030.
170 million, wow.
Yeah, just due to structural changes in the labor market. A lot of that is driven by AI and green technology, of course. But at the exact same time, nearly 40% of existing skills are expected to become completely outdated.
40%. I mean, that is a staggering amount of human capability just evaporating.
It really
So
is.
you're running a company of, say, 10,000 people. That means 4,000 of them might be relying on skills that won't even drive value in half a decade.
Exactly. And the friction from that, it's already here. Like Deloitte's data shows that 71% of workers are already performing work that is outside the scope of their official job descriptions.
Wait, 71%. So almost everyone.
Basically, yes. The reality of the work has completely outpaced the paperwork. The job description says one thing, but the actual daily demands of the market dictate something entirely different.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Relying on static job descriptions today is sort of like trying to navigate a modern, constantly expanding city using a map printed in, I don't know, 1995.
Oh, yeah. Perfect analogy.
Like the roads have completely changed. There are new bridges, entire new digital districts popping up. But leaders are still looking at this old, crumbled piece of paper, telling their employees to turn left at the old video rental store.
I love that. But, let's look at the actual cost of sticking to that old map because it goes way beyond just getting lost. It actually leaves an immense amount of value completely on the table.
How so?
Well, PwC research reveals that 58% of workers feel they have valuable skills that their organizations simply aren't using.
That's wild. So more than half your workforce is essentially sitting there saying, I can do more, but you won't let me.
Precisely. And why does that happen? Because those hidden skills don't fit neatly into their formal job titles or, their past job history.
Right.
The organization literally cannot see what its own people are capable of doing. If you are a financial analyst who just happens to be brilliant at prompt engineering or video editing on the side, your company's HR software only sees you as a spreadsheet cruncher.
Just to sell in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Your secondary and tertiary skills are completely invisible to the company.
If you're listening to this and thinking about your own team right now, Ask yourself, do you actually know the top 3 secondary skills of the person sitting next to you?
Probably not.
Right? Probably not,
Yeah.
because your internal systems just don't track it. So if the old map of rigid job titles is broken and it's blinding us to the talent we already have sitting right there, how do leaders actually map out the work that genuinely needs to get done?
Well, the answer requires zooming in. We have to move away from the macro level of a job and get down to the microscopic level of the work itself. This introduces a concept called fractionalized work.
Fractionalized work. Okay. Break the mechanics of that down for me. How does a company actually do that without everything falling apart?
Right, so it means we stop looking at a job as a single monolithic block of concrete. Instead, we deconstruct a job down into a dynamic taxonomy of individual tasks.
Okay.
And simultaneously, we deconstruct a worker down into a profile of specific skills. You completely decouple the work from the job title.
I need a real-world example of how that actually functions, honestly.
Right.
Who is doing this at scale? Because it sounds incredibly complex to map out.
Oh, it is. But Verizon is a really great benchmark here. They analyzed their entire workforce. We're talking around 140,000 employees. Huge.
Massive. And historically, they had this absolutely convoluted web of 11,000 different job codes.
11,000. That's insane.
It was practically unmanageable. You had 5 different titles that essentially did the exact same thing across different departments.
Right, like marketing coordinator 2 versus digital outreach specialist or whatever.
Exactly. So how did they fix it? They used natural language processing to scrape and analyze all those thousands of job descriptions. They looked for the overlapping redundancies and the core capabilities that were actually required for each one.
How clever.
Yeah, and by doing that, they shifted that massive, messy architecture down to just 2,400 codes.
Wow.
And crucially, those new codes weren't just vague titles anymore. They were mapped directly to specific verifiable skills. It created a unified language of capability across the entire enterprise.
Wow. So from 11,000 down to 2,400, that's a massive simplification, but I guess it actually gives them significantly more visibility into what their people can actually do. It absolutely does. Or, look at Unilever. They didn't just look at jobs. They looked at the actual output needed. They identified 80,000 specific tasks that the company needs to execute over the next few years to hit their strategic goals.
80,000 tasks.
Yeah. And by looking at those deliverables instead of looking at roles, they realized those 80,000 tasks don't all need to be done by full-time staff sitting in an office from 9 to 5.
Right.
They can be performed by this flute mix of full-time employees stepping outside their normal roles, plus gig workers, contractors, and increasingly AI agents.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It sounds like leaders need to stop treating hiring like buying a pre-built Lego castle, and instead they need to look at the individual Lego bricks, the specific tasks and the skills.
That's a great way to put it.
You can dynamically snap these bricks together to build whatever the business needs at that exact moment.
That is the exact mechanism. But let's look at the human impact for a second, because this isn't just an exercise in corporate efficiency or, saving a quick buck.
Right.
The Cleveland Clinic actually applied this fractionalization to their medical assistants. They broke that specific role down into 40 distinct tasks.
Wait, hold on. How do you do that in healthcare without compromising patient safety? That sounds risky.
That's the key, by being incredibly rigorous about the credentials required for each specific action. They didn't just guess. They used time tracking and credential mapping to really analyze the workflow.
Okay.
And when they looked at those 40 individual Lego bricks, they realized that a task like entering patient history into the tablet or scheduling a follow-up appointment doesn't actually require a specialized nursing degree.
No, it just requires being organized.
Exactly. It requires high data literacy and communication skills. So by decoupling the medical degree from the administrative task, they realized that 37 of those 40 tasks could actually be shifted to lower credentialed staff or just handled by automation entirely.
That is wild. 37 out of 40 tasks didn't even need the specialized medical background. So what was the actual result of reorganizing the work that way?
The results were staggering. By reorganizing the work at the task level, they saved the equivalent of 430 full-time employees and avoided $2 million in costs.
Oh my goodness.
But more importantly than the money, they freed up their highly trained clinical staff to actually spend time on patient care.
Doing what they were trained to do.
Yes. Triage, diagnosis, actual human connection, rather than drowning in data entry. They used skills-based planning to solve a massive healthcare talent shortage while fundamentally improving the actual human experience of doing the job.
Okay, that is an undeniably incredible outcome. But I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Breaking a massive enterprise down into tens of thousands of individual Lego bricks sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare. If I'm a CEO, it sounds like total chaos to manage. How do leaders avoid just creating a massive, disorganized pile of micro tasks?
You are hitting on the exact right vulnerability there. These initiatives fail all the time. BCG actually did a deep dive into why skills-based organization initiatives go sideways, and they found a few really consistent culprits.
Like what?
Well, leaders often fail because they just don't plan adequately, or they treat the transition as just, an HR software update.
Right.
Sometimes they try to define skills in a vacuum, like making these massive dictionaries of skills without actually connecting them to the daily work. But the biggest trap?
Yeah.
They mistakenly start by buying a very expensive piece of technology first, assuming the software is just going to magically fix the company culture.
Wait, hold on. With all this talk about AI and digital talent platforms, you're saying technology is actually the wrong place to start. Are leaders just getting distracted by shiny objects?
That is precisely what is happening. Tech is merely an enabler. It is not the strategy itself.
Interesting.
If you put a shiny new AI platform on top of a rigidly siloed organization, you don't get a skills-based organization. You just get faster chaos.
Faster chaos. I like that.
It's like trying to run a cutting-edge smartphone operating system on a flip phone's hardware. It's just going to crash. The BCG framework for success requires 3 foundational steps before the tech even comes into play.
Okay, walk us through the framework. How do you upgrade the hardware first?
First, you have to focus on specific business impacts. You do not try to boil the ocean and transition a 50,000-person company all at once.
Start small.
Yes. You pilot the program in a department like IT or R&D where skills are highly defined and easily measurable. A coding language, for instance, is a very binary skill to measure. You either can write in Python to a certain standard or you can't.
That makes sense. Keep the blast radius small while you learn. What's step 2?
Second, you have to anchor the work in the business via cross-functional teams. This cannot be an HR mandate handed down from the mountain.
Right, people hate that.
Exactly. It has to involve operations, finance, and department heads actually building the taxonomy together. And third, you have to connect these skills to the company culture and compensation.
Ah, the incentives.
Always. If you build a beautiful skills-based system, but you still only promote people based on their tenure or what college they went to, the system will collapse. You have to actively reward adaptability and continuous learning.
Do we have an example of a company that actually got this foundational work right? Someone who didn't just rush out and buy the shiny object?
We do. BCG highlighted a major North American food manufacturer. They needed their data and analytics department to keep up with rapidly shifting consumer behaviors.
Okay.
And instead of buying a massive company-wide HR software package, they built a cross-functional team specifically for that single department. They interviewed their top performers to see what skills actually drove results, mapped the future skills needed, identified the gaps, and then tailored their recruiting and learning just for that one group.
Oh, very targeted.
Yes, they solved a specific business demand first, proved the model, and then they scaled it.
Okay, so a leader properly aligns the business goals, establishes the skills taxonomy in a specific pilot program, gets the culture and the incentives right. Then what? What does the technological shiny object actually do for them once that solid foundation is finally laid?
This is where we step into the future of work. Once the foundation is there, platforms like Gloat's Mosaic solution can come in and act as the central nervous system. These platforms use what is called a multi-ontology workforce graph.
Oh boy. Multi-ontology workforce graph. You are definitely going to have to translate that for me. Give me the summary of what that actually means mathematically.
Fair enough. Fair enough. An ontology is really just a way of categorizing things.
Okay.
The problem in most companies is that human resources has one category system, IT has another, and project managers have a third. A multi-ontology graph is basically a sophisticated data layer that forces all these different systems to speak the exact same language.
Oh, I see.
It mathematically links a project need. Let's say we need to analyze consumer purchasing data to a specific Python skill, rather than just blindly searching the database for someone with the title Data Analyst 2.
Ah, okay. So it's breaking down the language barriers between departments.
Exactly. It creates an internal talent marketplace that matches a specific project with the absolute best resource in real time. It looks at the task, analyzes the required skills, and decides, hey, does this need our full-time employee in marketing who happens to know Python?
Right.
Or should we hire a specialized gig worker for 3 days? Or can an AI agent just execute this data sorting immediately?
So what does this all mean for the human worker then? Does AI essentially become a coworker in this internal marketplace? Like I'm the project lead and I hire the AI for the massive repetitive data sorting task, but I hire the human from a totally different department for the complex emotional intelligence task.
Yes, that is the exact dynamic being created. But what's really fascinating here is that while some companies are fractionalizing work into tiny microtasks, others are pushing the frontier by doing the exact opposite.
Doing the opposite.
Yeah, they're moving toward outcome-based work.
Broadening instead of fractionalizing. How does that work? If we just spent all this time breaking things into tiny Lego bricks, why are we zooming back out?
Well, Human-Centric Labs calls it a service-based model. Instead of micromanaging the work by breaking it into tiny tasks for the human to do, you organize work by the overarching problems that need to be solved.
Okay.
You give human workers broad guardrails on what the outcome should be, and you give them total autonomy on how to achieve it. You unleash their critical thinking and creativity. They're the ones who utilize the AI and the internal marketplace to execute the subtasks.
That sounds incredibly empowering, actually. It
Yeah.
shifts the human worker from being a cog in a machine just mindlessly assembling Lego bricks to being the architect directing the outcomes.
It does, and this raises an incredibly important point about the massive societal implications of this shift.
Yeah, and just a quick note for you, our listener, as we dive into these societal shifts. Our goal today is really simply to impartially report on the data and the ideas coming from the World Economic Forum and Deloitte.
Yay.
We aren't here to endorse a specific economic policy or, any political viewpoint. But looking strictly at the numbers and the demographic data they published, what are they actually predicting here?
The predictions are really profound. When you focus on specific skills and outcomes, rather than arbitrarily demanding 4-year degrees or, unbroken, rigid job histories, you unlock what Deloitte calls trapped capacity.
Trapped capacity, like the 58% of workers from that PwC study who had hidden skills their bosses couldn't see.
Exactly, that's the internal trapped capacity, but it goes way beyond just current employees.
How so?
Removing rigid job requirements, like demanding a bachelor's degree for a coding job that really only requires a specific certification, allows organizations to tap into incredible talent pools that were previously just completely invisible to them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Deloitte notes that this opens the door to neurodiverse candidates who might not fit a traditional interview mold or, might have gaps in their resume, but possess exceptional specialized skills.
That makes total sense.
It opens doors to off-balance sheet workers, caregivers re-entering the workforce, and self-taught experts.
So by looking at the specific skill instead of the pedigree, it fundamentally levels the playing field.
The data strongly suggests that. LinkedIn actually found that a skills-based hiring approach, where recruiters search for skills rather than previous job titles, leads to a 24% increase in the proportion of women in the talent pool compared to traditional hiring.
24% just from changing the search terms.
Yep. And the World Economic Forum estimates that shifting globally to a skills-first model could enable over 100 million people worldwide to join the workforce who are currently locked out by traditional resume screeners. By changing the mechanism of how we define work, we literally democratize access to opportunity.
Okay, let's bring this all together. For company leaders, the core takeaway here is that the operating logic of business has fundamentally, irreversibly changed. Transitioning to a skills-based organization is no longer a trendy HR pilot program to read about in some management magazine. It is the critical, existential strategic lever for agility, for innovation, and for actually utilizing the hidden potential within your own ranks.
If you are relying on a job-based architecture today, you are intentionally wearing blinders in an economy that demands 360-degree vision. I mean, we've moved from pouring concrete into static molds to navigating a living, breathing ecosystem.
A totally new map for a totally new city. Thank you for helping us chart the mechanics of that transition today.
It was a pleasure.
And for you, our listener, whether you are a leader trying to future-proof your workforce or just a professional navigating your own career, your specific adaptable skills are your true currency. Your job title is just a temporary label.
So true.
But before we let you go, consider this one final provocative thought from the World Economic Forum and PwC research. If skills are the new currency, where do you actually keep them? Right now, your skills live in your current employer's proprietary HR system. or on a static PDF resume. But what happens when we inevitably move to a world of stackable, verifiable credentials, living on a perfectly portable, universal digital ledger? Imagine a world where your exact granular value, every Python course you passed, every successful project outcome you directed, is 100% transparent, cryptographically verified, and travels with you border to border.
That changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
How does a company retain you when the whole world can instantly see your worth and bid on your specific skills in real time? Something to chew on as you evaluate your own value in this new landscape. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.